Hey folks, welcome back to Classroom Hatchery Television. I'm joined again today by Elizabeth to help us learn about the predators and prey of Atlantic salmon. We're also going to have a presentation from the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority about healthy aquatic ecosystems. And we'll have another fishy fact from Johnny. But before we get into all of that, let's check on our hatcheries.
All right, starting with hatchery number 1. The filter and the air pump are functioning. The temperature is 4 degrees Celsius. We still have healthy-eyed eggs, but they are increasingly looking more developed.
And checking on hatchery number 2, we can see that our filter is running and our air pump is running. And our temperature is 7 degrees Celsius. And our alevin are looking nice and healthy. We've had 7 eggs that didn't hatch, and they've all turned white. So we've lost 7 eggs out of 100. We've got 93 alevin in here. 93%, that's a pretty good number.
Both hatcheries look good again this week.
Predators are animals that eat other animals. And prey are the animals that the predator eats. For example, when a fox eats a rabbit, the fox is the predator, and the rabbit is the prey. The rabbit is the prey of the fox. Atlantic salmon are predators, but they're also the prey of other predators. Predators and prey make up parts of food webs.
A food chain is a group of organisms that are connected in the order that they eat food, from producers to consumers, prey, predators, scavengers, and decomposers. A food web is all of the food chains that exist in an ecosystem, which are often interconnected and overlapping between species. When we look at a food web, we can actually see the way that energy and nutrients move through the ecosystem as organisms grow, are eaten, and decompose. A food web is organized into different levels called trophic levels. At the start of every food web is the sun, and the sun provides something that all organisms need to survive, which is energy. And next come the primary producers, who create their own food using sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water through a process known as photosynthesis. The most familiar type of producers that we know are plants, such as trees and grass, but algae, such as seaweed and phytoplankton, are also producers. All of these producers get their energy from the sun, use it to grow, and store it in their bodies and plant materials as leaves, twigs, grass, flowers, and other parts. As animals eat these producers, the energy moves from the plant and into the animal. Animals that eat producers are known as primary consumers. Herbivores are primary consumers that eat mainly plants, and these include many species of fish, benthic macroinvertebrates, mice, deer, and even elephants. So far in the food web, the energy has gone from the sun, into the plants, and into the animals that eat the plants. Carnivores are secondary consumers that eat other consumers. As carnivores like fox, mink, and eagles eat other animals, the energy from the one animal moves to the next. There might even be an apex predator at the top of the food web, which is known as a tertiary consumer, like a wolf or a bear. These consumers get their energy by eating other consumers, or any other organism in a lower trophic level. Once an organism dies, their body decomposes and their nutrients are taken up again by organisms, which end up recycling the energy back into the food web.
Atlantic salmon are part of very complex food webs. We'll be just taking a simple look at the predators and prey of Lake Ontario Atlantic salmon. When we look at an Atlantic salmon, we can see that they have a large mouth with sharp little teeth that are perfect for capturing their prey. So what do Atlantic salmon eat? What are the prey of Atlantic salmon?
Adult Atlantic salmon spend most of their time in big water. Some Atlantic salmon live in the Atlantic Ocean, but others live in large lakes. Our adult Atlantic salmon live in Lake Ontario. Adult Atlantic salmon feed mainly on other fish. In Lake Ontario, this includes fish like lake herring, rainbow smelt, alewife, and sculpins. Juvenile Atlantic salmon live in cold water streams. As eggs and alevin, they have yolks to nourish them. But as they use up their yolks, they become fry and begin to eat invertebrates, which are small aquatic insects that don't have a backbone. These invertebrates include worms, very small zooplankton, and larger insects including mayfly, dragonfly, and stonefly larvae, caddisfly larvae, and riffle beetles. These invertebrates play very important ecological roles in a stream ecosystem. Not only do they provide a main food source for Atlantic salmon, but they also are the main food source for many species of fish, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and even mammals. Some of these invertebrates also burrow into the sediments, which mix and aerates it in the process. And the aeration benefits bacteria, which speed up the decomposition of organic detritus, which includes organic materials such as leaves, carcasses, and feces. And the invertebrates themselves also break down organic detritus, which brings it back into the overall food web. So now that we've looked at the prey of Atlantic salmon, let's look at who eats them, their predators.
A pile of eggs in a red, alevin, fry, and parr are all great meals for a lot of different creatures,
including invertebrates, other fish, mink, otter, great blue heron, American bittern, merganser, kingfisher, and northern water snake. As the fish gets larger, it becomes the prey of birds like bald eagle and osprey. A migrating adult, if constrained in movement by shallow water, may be occasionally taken by coyote, wolf, bear, or raccoon.
Atlantic salmon are, and have been for a very long time, an important food source for people, sometimes being the reason why people lived in certain areas. They are also heaps of fun to catch. Now that we've learned about the predators and prey of Atlantic salmon in Lake Ontario, we're going to hear from the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority about healthy aquatic ecosystems. And then we'll hear another fishy fact from Johnny.
Welcome to Bring Back the Salmon, exploring benthic macroinvertebrates. My name is Mary Gowan, and I'm the Community Learning Coordinator for Durham Region and Education and Training Department with Toronto Region Conservation Authority. Just some background about me and how I got here. I've always been curious about things around me in the natural world. I would explore the forest in my cottage and play in different ephemeral ponds for hours to learn about the frogs and the insects that live together. I would go swimming, with a pair of goggles just to explore underwater, and go fishing every evening to learn about the fish in my lake. At home, I would go for hikes, bike rides, help garden, and learn about the flora and fauna around me as a child. In school, I was always interested in science, but it wasn't until university that I really got to study and get interested in ecology and conservation. I graduated from the University of Guelph with a science degree, kind of majoring in biological science. So actually in my last summer at university, I was hired at TRCA, and I've worked there for 16 years and kind of started with small stewardship projects and monitoring different areas in Pickering around Frenchman's Bay. I've worked with restoration services for a year just to get to know what I wanted to do, but it was a great experience to learn what was happening in the restoration services side of our organization. And then I came back to stewardship or community learning, as I mentioned earlier, in 2008, and I've done various roles throughout that time. And enjoying every minute of it. I had a great time working in the field with students, residents, high school students. I do run our Conservation Youth Corps program in Durham and helped them learn about the environment and natural spaces in their neighborhood. So as I mentioned, I work for Toronto Region Conservation Authority, or TRCA. It is one of 36 conservation authorities in Ontario. We have more than 60 years of experience looking after the 9 watersheds of the Toronto region and the Lake Ontario waterfront. We do work with municipalities, the province, and other stakeholders in the communities that we serve. So we work to preserve and protect the land, to improve wildlife and plant habitats. We also monitor and report on the health of Toronto environment and provide input and expertise on watershed management, resource conservation, natural heritage, and cultural heritage. We also help reduce human impact on the natural resources while acquiring, protecting, and restoring conservation lands to further watershed and resource management. We run a lot of programs such as, we help out with these programs such as Bring Back the Salmon that teach a greater appreciation of the environment and also ways to adopt sustainable technologies. And we encourage people of all ages to get out and enjoy nature for optimal health and well-being. So I did mention that we kind of work on a watershed basis. So this is the TRCA jurisdiction. So we take care of 9 watersheds. You can see those across the map there and the Lake Ontario waterfront. So no matter where you are in a watershed. In simple terms, a watershed is an area of land that catches the rain and snow and drains or seeps into the wetland, streams, rivers, or lakes, or groundwater. In the Toronto region, all of those watersheds flow into Lake Ontario, which is an important natural ecosystem and the source of drinking water for many of us. So we are all connected by watersheds, and that impacts the water quality, which can affect watershed residents. And I'm not just talking about residents as you and me, but residents as, the fox that runs down your street or the frogs in your creek, and those bugs in your creek as well. So, as I mentioned, we focus on watersheds. One of our main focuses on healthy watersheds or waterways, not only species at risk like Atlantic salmon, but all native organisms and of course us. So a healthy water ecosystem is essential for the healthy food web. So one way we can monitor the health of the salmon ecosystem or rivers, streams, and lakes is by looking at water quality. So there are a number of ways that we can measure water quality, but today we'll specifically look at a special group of organisms, so benthic macroinvertebrates. So what is a benthic macroinvertebrate? So let's step back and kind of define macroinvertebrates. So they're organisms that are large or macro enough to see with the naked eye and lack a backbone or invertebrate. So they inhabit many types of running water, from fast flowing streams to slow moving, even muddy waters, rivers. Aquatic macroinvertebrates live on, under, and around rocks and sediment at the bottom of lakes, rivers, and streams. So as a result of their habitat choice, macroinvertebrates are often called benthos, which refers to the collective organisms which live on, in, or near the bottom, or in a benthic zone. So there are different types of benthic macroinvertebrates. The first we will discuss are the insect macroinvertebrates. A lot of the insect benthic macroinvertebrates we study are larval forms of insects we may recognize outside of the water. For example, the dragonfly belongs to the order of insects called Odonata that spends its juvenile life in the water and its adult life in the air or on land. The adults lay their eggs in the water, and then the larvae hatch from their eggs and look essentially like the adults, but with no wings. So there are also adult forms like the diving beetle, as you can see in these pictures here, that are also benthic macroinvertebrates. And then this is just an example of one of the benthic macroinvertebrates, the insect form. The caddisfly are often one of the most diverse and abundant organisms in freshwater habitats. They're important food sources for fish, including salmon. They can be described as small moth-like insects with 2 pairs of hair membranous wings. One of the most interesting characteristics of the caddisfly is that they can create ornate and highly intricate protective cases that they build as larvae. There are also non-insect benthic macroinvertebrates. So many of these organisms can be found in a variety of aquatic habitats. So we've got a couple of examples here. So different worm species, aquatic snails, different scuds, freshwater mussels, and crayfish. Benthics are an essential part of our water ecosystem. They provide waste management. Many benthics are detrivores and herbivores. This means they'll clean up decaying material in the water and feed on algae as well. They're also good water filters. So did you know that a single mussel can filter 38 liters of water a day? They can be bioindicators as well. So the diversity of benthic macroinvertebrates in an area can tell you the health of the aquatic ecosystem. Because of their abundance, benthics make up an important link in the food web, often as prey. Food webs show the natural interconnectedness of organisms and ecosystems by showing what they eat. Animals in a food web are classified as either predators or prey, or sometimes both. Because many benthic macroinvertebrates are insect larvae, they can contribute to the food web differently depending on their life cycle. For example, this larva mayfly provides important food for juvenile Atlantic salmon, while adult mayfly are great food for frogs and birds. So what if we don't see a lot of biodiversity? We could see low water quality, which may impact the presence of other animals like Atlantic salmon because they live in the water, but also because they don't have as much food to eat. In an ecosystem, it starts to tell us about the health of that ecosystem. We can look at bioindicators to find out the health of that ecosystem. So what is a bioindicator? So bio means living, and indicator means way to measure. So a bioindicator is a living thing or process that can tell us about the health of the environment. How are benthic macroinvertebrates bioindicators? They're useful as water quality indicators because they have relatively long lifespans and are sensitive to changes in the aquatic environment. They sometimes don't move far or can't move far in response to a pollutant. They often rely on substrate in the river as habitat, so too much sediment can alter that. They may also require a certain temperature of water to survive, so warmer waters increase changes to algae blooms and harmful bacteria and microbes, but also many species of fish also have a hard time adapting to warmer waters than their life cycles require. They're sensitive to pollution that can alter their development or chances of survival. Different benthics have varying levels of tolerance to temperature, water levels, pollution, and sediment in the water. Stonefly nymphs, aquatic insects that are very sensitive to most pollutants and cannot survive in a stream's dissolved oxygen falls below a certain level. So if a biosurvey shows that no stoneflies are present in the stream, that's used to support them. A hypothesis might be that the dissolved oxygen has fallen to a point that keeps stoneflies from reproducing or has killed them outright. In contrast, snails are more tolerant of pollution, temperature, and sediment, so can be found in clean to polluted waters. When there's poor water quality, there will be less benthics found, which would mean less food sources for fish such as the Atlantic salmon. So I'm just going to show you a video of how we sample benthic macroinvertebrates at TRCA.
Toronto Region Conservation Authority has been monitoring benthic macroinvertebrates since 2001. Monitoring the health and the diversity, so how many and the different types of benthic macroinvertebrates in our streams can teach us how healthy our streams are. Some examples of benthic macroinvertebrates are dragonflies, mayflies. We also collect crayfish, snails. We find them in the stream because they spend a number of years, up to 3 years of their larval stage, in the water. You can find them hiding under rocks, under the mud, under different types of debris. So we'll kick from one side to the next and hoping that all of the sediment that we kicked up and the rocks that we flipped over had bugs hiding underneath that will then go into our net to create our sample. So now we're going to preserve our samples, and then afterwards we're going to take them back. So let's go to the lab and see what we found.
Okay, now let's take a look at the microinvertebrate samples we got this morning. We have a mayfly here, and then this is the same mayfly, just a little bit smaller. We have some caddisflies here. So these mayflies are more sensitive to urbanization and pollution. They tend to like colder water streams. They're usually a good indicator the site is pretty healthy. Here in the middle of the red worm, this is a quantumate or midge. We don't want to see a lot of these more tolerant taxa in our watershed because they usually are an indicator of more urbanized streams. Our benthos monitoring is part of TRCA's long-term regional watershed monitoring program. We're also equipped to collect lake samples from Lake Ontario on the waterfront. We used our benthos data collected along with other data such as water chemistry data and fishery records to tell a complete story of the health of a watershed. TRCA recognizes the value of long-term environmental monitoring, and we will continue to share the data collected with our local and regional municipalities and other partners, so we have the ability to track changes in the health of regional watershed over time.
How does TRCA use this information? So we collect benthic macroinvertebrates annually over 150 monitoring stations across the Toronto region. We collected over 45,000 benthic macroinvertebrates in 2022 to support the Regional Watershed Monitoring Program, habitat restoration projects, environmental assessments, and research studies. All of that data is funneled into our new Watershed and Ecosystem Reporting Hub. The Reporting Hub identifies current conditions by theme and explains the importance of different environmental indicators for understanding watershed and ecosystem health. It also shows how conditions are changing over time and where we are relative to where we want to be. You can find more information about benthic communities in streams in the Water Resource System section of the Hub, which is highlighted here in red. However, there are a lot more to explore and learn while visiting this resource hub, and check out different sections when you're there. You can learn about natural disasters, different land use, water quality, and we're always adding different information and different sections so you can come back and visit. So thank you for watching. We have more resources and events posted on our website at trca.ca.
Hello everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this week's segment of Fishy Facts. I'm Johnny Nene. This week, we're going to look at a fish with a unique habit of acquiring its prey, the archerfish. There are 7 species of archerfish in the world. They're small, typically between 12 and 18 centimeters, although one species can reach lengths of about 40 centimeters. They have pointed snouts and a protractile mouth with a lower jaw that extends past the upper jaw. Their dorsal fin is set further back on their body than most other fish species. They have deep, laterally compressed silvery bodies with black blotches or lines. This helps them to avoid being eaten by predators by allowing them to blend into their shadowy environments. Their habitat consists of freshwater streams, rivers, or lakes, although some species inhabit fresh or brackish waters of mangroves and estuaries. They are native to India, Southeast Asia, the Philippines, and Australia. Archerfish typically feed on insects, spiders, crustaceans, and small fish and even lizards. What makes archerfish unique is the way they acquire their prey. Archerfish shoot a stream of water from their mouth, like a water gun, to knock down prey items from above the water's surface. Adults can knock prey down from up to 3 meters away. That's about the same height as a basketball net. And this requires a considerable amount of technical ability from the archerfish. Archerfish use their tongue and a small groove in the roof of their mouth to channel the water. Then they close their gills to propel a stream at their prey items. They are very persistent, and they will often shoot their streams repeatedly until they are successful. Young archerfish are less accurate with their streams, so they often hunt in small groups to improve their chances of harvesting prey. Once they knock down a prey item, it's every fish for themselves. The quickest to react gets the food. They will sometimes leap out of the water to try to snatch the prey before it touches the water's surface. As they become older, they become more effective with their aim and their water stream. When we look at something below the water's surface, the object often appears in a slightly different position due to the refracting or bending of light as it passes through the water's surface. Archerfish have a special part of their eye that compensates for this as they focus on their prey sitting above the water's surface. Although archerfish are fairly common in the wild, they are currently being threatened due to pollution and habitat destruction from the prawn aquaculture industry. And because of their unique feeding habits, they're also very popular in the pet trade. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed learning about the archerfish in this week's segment. Thanks for listening, and be sure to check out next week's episode. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Classroom Hatchery Television. And thanks to all of our presenters, from the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, Johnny with his fishy fact, and Elizabeth for helping out again with this week's episode. Next week, we're going to be exploring what happened to Atlantic salmon in Lake Ontario. Why did they vanish? Until then, keep on swimming upstream.